Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all for coming out. I know it's always a challenge to fit these kinds of sessions into your day. But what we'd like to do today is first open with a prayer, of course. And Lord, thank you again for the opportunity to come together in fellowship and communion and to share ideas on how we're going to move forward in mission and ministry, bring your word to the world. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Okay, so today, 3 months ago approximately, we got together at the annual financial ministry meeting, and we put forward a motion to move forward with calling an associate pastor. The last 3 months, the council has been working on, and pastor has been working on moving forward that mission, and we'd like to give you an update today on where we're at and answer some questions. So the outline for today, if I do this right,
Try the down arrow.
that one, okay, is we're gonna videotape this again, thanks to Marissa. Hello, Marissa. And we're gonna do 2 sessions. The idea is to create the opportunity for them to share this information on this very important subject with as many people as we can. And also, we've had a request from the choir, if we could moderate this meeting such that we get through the informational session and kind of put the questions at least toward the end, that way they can hear the message, and if they have to leave early, they at least got the opportunity to hear the message, and then they can hear the questions in the discussion, either through the videotape or some of them can come back to the second session. So I'll try and moderate it that way. But what we'd like to do is go forward and remind everyone and reaffirm, we've done some work on what this associate pastor, how this associate pastor role will help us move forward in mission and ministry. We'll talk about that. We'll give you an update on the call process. We've begun, we've started down that path. There's more to go, but we want to bring you forward on where that is. The fund process, we'll talk about money. For some reason, they always elect me to talk about money. I always have to get to talk about the money, but we'll talk about money a little bit and what the challenges and opportunities for us are. And then, although Jill's not here, we have some interesting and exciting ideas about how to move forward in stewardship, and I think Chris is going to talk about that for Jill. So we'd like to move through this, take about an hour to get through it so we can get ready for 11 o'clock service. If you don't get all your questions answered, if we don't hit on all the topics, please come back for a light lunch. We're going to continue the discussion after 11 o'clock service. So that's what we're going to try and do today. Is anything that's not on the agenda that somebody wants to make sure we touch on? Great. Okay. So, Chris, if you can come forward, and we'll talk about the role.
So we're calling an associate pastor, and Pastor Chris will give us a little bit of an update on where we are in that process. But what I would like to do is go over what our expectations for the role is going forward. We, as a background piece, we know that congregations in all mainline Protestant denominations have been declining in membership and engagement. The church is undergoing fundamental changes. We're part of it. We've seen our membership go down, our active attendance go down. The nature of engagement between families and the church has changed. It's a fact. That's all. We have to deal with it. We have to find better ways to engage people where they are. All of us have to do that. As part of that effort for this congregation, we decided last summer to focus on 3 major initiatives. Number one, and perhaps most important, is to revitalize, renew our discipleship. And so we've had a number of initiatives around that specifically. Number 2, part of the change in the nature of congregations and their engagement with the church affects volunteerism, the amount of time and the nature of time that people can spend in congregational life. And so we need to respond to that by reorganizing the way we do business, both in ministry and in the business of the church. So that's part of what we're talking about with church reorganization. And finally, we as a congregation specifically picked on a youth focus as something we need to concentrate on, we need to rebuild. And so, renewal of discipleship, youth focus, church reorganization, we would be naive to think that just because we're going for an associate pastor, we can successfully address all those things just through that move. We're not figuring on that. But the associate pastor, we do believe, will strengthen our staffing and key programs, will be a partner in ministry for Pastor Chris. And in his or her role as leader for youth programs and youth faith formation, the associate pastor will be a key response to our needs in that area.
And families.
I'm sorry?
Youth and their families.
And their families, absolutely. So some of our expectations for the associate pastor include youth program leadership, being an innovator in our approach to children, youth, and young families. Churches are experimenting, responding as we are to changing circumstances, a different environment. Innovation is key. We can't keep doing the same things or things that have been successful in the past. We can build new innovations on past experience, of course, but innovation is key. We're hoping for an infusion of new energy and new ideas with the associate pastor. And finally, the central mission of our congregation, as it is for most congregations, is faith formation. In our case, for children, for youth, their families, and adults of every generation, adults in every stage of life. We need to address the different needs in all those parts of our congregation. The primary focus of our associate pastor, though, will be for children, youth, and young families. That's where we want him or her to focus their attention. That's where our expectations lie. We're going to come back to this in a little bit, but in the interest of getting the choir as fully briefed as possible, we're going to move on to the financials, and then we'll do an update on the call process. We'll circle around to the roll in just a minute. Oh, sorry.
Call process is
Call process comes first. Pastor, you're up.
I'm up. Well, this Wednesday, I was at the Synod office and I had an opportunity to meet with Bishop Tracy Bartholomew. We had an appointment to talk about this very thing. I asked where we're at in the process and what are the next steps. And as she reminded me, whatever candidate is offered to our congregation, the candidate first starts with the senior pastor. And if the candidate and the senior pastor don't hit it off, we can't work it out, then we don't go any further in the process. If things were to work out between myself and the candidate, then the next step would be, there's an option. You may either have a call committee that sits down and meets with this candidate, or you can take the candidate and have him or her meet the entire church council. I think we're talking about doing a call committee, so it's a little smaller group before we bring this person to the entire church council. I asked her, where are we in the process in terms of names? She already enlisted one of the new candidates and thought he might work well here. He read our job description. He's a second career person, even though he's a newbie out of seminary. He looked at the job description and said, thank you, but no, it's not for me. It's too much working with youth. So we are now being considered for another candidate. I asked, where are we in relation to the other 10 congregations? We're 10 of 9, or we're 1 of 10. So I said, if the 10, where are we on this list? And she said, actually, we're at the top of the list. So she has someone in mind. They would have to explore it with this, because it's a couple. The woman works, has a high-powered job, so you know how that goes. If things don't look good with driving, well, I don't know about Don, but
Yeah. Poor Don.
we love Don. He's willing to make the drive. But, so we're in that process. I can't tell you a date because she doesn't know. She does the vetting, her assistants do the vetting. She did make this suggestion, though, that she would encourage us to call Jason Reed, our Synod staff youth specialist, to come and talk to the council. So maybe we could further refine what we're talking about with working with youth and families and faith formation. So that is an option that we can talk about as a council to see if you would come out. Is there paperwork to fill out at this point? No, there isn't. You do that apparently with the lead pastor, and you did that 6 years ago when I was called here. But we gave the job description that was, the council approved it, and that's what she has. She has a pay range, and it was made clear that we want somebody, but it's a term call. Term call being 3 years, full time, and then we would see where we're at. I have to say, I don't know if that's a real charming incentive. On the other hand, I remember many of my colleagues as associate pastors didn't stay past year 2. So as I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, oh dear God, if we go through this and this guy or gal leaves after 2 years, shoot me, Lord, and we'll have a funeral now. But, so I'm thinking maybe this person will say, well, I can commit for 3 years, because a lot of times these younger, newer pastors want to get launched. It's a great way to learn things as the associate, and then they want to be on their own. So we are actually doing a double thing here of building our ministry with our families here and building ministry in the outer community. We're also grooming a younger pastor to be a more experienced, capable pastor when he or she leaves this place and goes to another parish, usually as a solo. So that's where we are. No dates, but you need to know we've already been graciously turned down. And I think that's okay. When she said the age of this gentleman was about 55, I said, well, they've got that in me. We don't need another one of me. We need somebody younger. And somebody who doesn't have to dye their hair. So, any questions? Alex?
I'm curious how we're at the head of the list.
Well, because, I'll be honest, we are a larger church. I go to a monthly meeting with other lead pastors and have been meeting with Tracy Bartholomew for the last 3 years. And she has journeyed with me and the others, losing Linda Walker, the whole fiasco with the office, front office with the church administrator that is now an office administrator. Thank God we have Laura, but she and those pastors supported me throughout that, and then the loss of Linda Pullis. If I hadn't had them, I probably wouldn't be here now. So she understands, plus we're a larger church. She's aware that we cut our benevolence. We want to bring that benevolence up. She knows that if we don't do something to help shore up but also grow our ministries, we aren't going to be a lead congregation. So that is why we're head of the class. Anything else?
I think I'm back. Okay. So, one of the challenges, we certainly know what we want to accomplish with mission and ministry. We put forth goals, we set a clear direction we're beginning to set that clear direction. The question then becomes to us, what do we need to do to be able to deliver on that mission? What are the challenges that we need to step up to make that happen? And what I'd like to do is talk about those challenges in the context of a spending plan. What we've tried to do is put it forward in very, very simple and clear terms. We haven't tried to do anything complicated or change the way we present the numbers. So we're going to look at the spending plan, a 4-year spending plan, in the same way that we look at our spending plan each year, the same categories, the same organization, and say, if we look forward 4 years, what is it going to look like for us? The other thing we did is we made some very, very simplifying assumptions so that we could understand the impact. So what I'm going to show you is a set of assumptions that assumes income is flat, which means the forecast for this year, we made it the same forecast every year going forward. So we can see what the challenge is. So we didn't make any assumptions on income. We did make some assumptions on expenses, which we'll talk about. We made some modest assumptions about staff salary increases. We made some modest assumptions about some cost increases. But in general, we're trying to just show the impact of adding the associate pastor and what is the impact of the associate pastor on what we need to step up to. So to that end, I'm going to put a spreadsheet on the screen, and we'll try and talk about what it says. Is that okay? All right. Trying to be straightforward, trying to make it uncomplicated. Okay. So on the top line, above the line, as you can see, other than in year 3, we've made an assumption that income is flat. All right, $503,000 a year. In year 3, at the financial ministry meeting, we talked about making a loan to the congregation from the capital campaign of $24,000. That was one of the assumptions that we made during the discussion at the financial ministry meeting. So that you see as a one-time loan to the congregation, which our hope would be that if we achieve the mission of growing the congregation, growing our ministry, that we would repay that to the congregation, or to the capital campaign at some point in the future beyond the 4-year planning horizon. So what you see here is a 4-year plan that says we need $2 million, or that we're forecasting $2 million $2,012,000 of income over 4 years. All right? Now, in terms of expense, one of the key decisions that we made as a congregation in order to fund this plan forward was to reduce mission support from 17.5% to 13.5%. So we have kept that number flat at 13.5% for the 4-year planning horizon. As I said, all other expenses, which is the 4th line under expense, we made modest assumptions about salary increases, modest assumptions about some operating cost increases, very modest, 1.5% range. And we made some basic assumptions that we would probably want to fund some of our ministry programs if we do bring the associate pastor in, or when we bring the associate pastor in, there would be some modest increases in some of the ministry programs. So you can see a fairly regular increase year over year in all other expenses. The other major factor between this plan and last year is we're going to have a full year impact of Laura this year. We're going to have a full year impact of the volunteer coordinator in each of these years going forward. So we assumed that we would continue to have the office administrator full-time. We assumed that we would continue to have the volunteer coordinator full-time. I'm sorry.
Full year.
Full year, I'm sorry, full year. Part-time for the full year. Thank you. So basically, we put forth a series of, and then the other assumption we made was the associate pastor, we have half year in year 1, half year in year 4, and full years in the two middle years for the 3-year term call. The approximate compensation package is $88,000 with 2 1% increases in year 3 and year 4. So again, modest increases. So the assumption was to try and make a relatively flat forecast so that we could understand what the impact to us is. Okay, so $2,012,000 of income forecasted $2,220,000 of expense. There's a $184,000 delta between those two sums. Okay, so if you add total income across, that's $2,012,000. If you add total expenses across, it's $2,220,000. The difference between those two sums is $184,000. Okay, so that's where we're starting. Now, as you remember, we come below the line, all the surplus down at the bottom. We have approximately $132,000 in surplus at the moment, which we're going to spend down. Out of that $132,000, we're going to continue to keep our $20,000 reserve for emergencies. So that leaves us $112,000 surplus, which we're going to apply 100% to the $184,000 deficit or gap that I told you about. You take the $112,000, you apply it, that leaves us at the end of 4 years with a $72,000 shortfall on this plan. Okay. All things being equal, all assumptions being what I just said, we as a congregation need to step forward and enact plans to raise another $72,000 over the next 3.5 years. Okay, there's lots of things we can do. Clearly, we want to do it through increased giving, not through spending cuts. The idea is we want to grow mission and ministry, not shrinking. So that's the simplest way I can try and present the challenge. We have a $72,000 challenge over 3 years that we need to fill. Question, I have one more slide on this and then, yes, go ahead.
I see in the last year you have as the associate pastor salary what is essentially a half-year
Correct.
salary.
Correct.
Now, even though we call a person to a term thing, I would assume that one of two things is going to happen. They would either wish to stay or we would wish to replace them because we would want to continue that ministry. So I think that assumption is not correct.
No, actually, I understand your point. So actually, you actually hit on a point. Right now, this plan is a term called 3 years. At the end of that, we stop. This plan does not address what happens next. You're absolutely right. This plan does not address that. If we want to continue forward in year 4, month 6, we need even more than the $72,000. We've got to grow income even more than $70,000. If we want to restore mission support to the levels that we all really believe that we've been called to do, those are all net increases bigger than this. I just wanted to show in this plan the impact of adding the associate pastor. All of these other questions have to be addressed as part of our long-term plan. You're absolutely correct. Yeah.
We have to keep in mind that it's not just raising $72,000 though, because if we have increased giving, then that increases the amount we have to give to mission support.
Yes, hold that thought, yes. But the gap in this plan is $72,000. We need to raise more than $72,000 in order to I'll show you that. Good point, John. Because we're going to continue, the real issue is we're going to be committed forever. Well, let's just put the next slide up. Check. The very first bullet is that for every $100 in new income that we raise, $87.50 of it goes toward operations. So we need to raise about, in order to get the $72,000, we need, if we're going to remain committed to even the 13.5% world mission support, we need to raise about $100,000 total cash over 4 years. Again, it's not instantaneous. As the first slide is, our point, our recommendation, our commitment is we want to close this gap through increased giving, through increased income, not through spending cuts. Cutting funding further just seems inconsistent with what we're trying to achieve. But the challenge is we have to fill this income gap. And we have to turn the trend around of decreasing year-over-year income. The assumption that income is flat is really counter to the trend that we've experienced for the last 3 or 4 years. income has been going down for the last 3 or 4 years. So not only do we need to have, fill the funding gap, but we've got to reverse the trend that we've been dealing with for the last 3 or 4 years in decreased income. The point was, on the next line, is that we have done this. We have stepped up to this kind of thing in the past. We've raised money for the capital campaign. You've been faithful and you've been committed and you've helped us move forward in mission, and we need to continue to do that. There is no other way forward without each of us. The third bullet really is the decrease. Yes, Bill?
The decrease in income over the last couple of years, is it a volume issue or a rate issue?
Primarily attendees. Actually, I think, when Jay, you can speak, when you did the numbers, actually per capita giving has gone up slightly. It hasn't.
I mean,
The
it's,
people attending churches.
it's the people attending church and some very significant givers.
Yes, which we have lost some single large donors over the last couple of years. No, these were people who they didn't just up and leave, they aged out, basically. But our average attendance has been trending down, and it's probably down on an average Sunday, 20 or 30 families over the last year, like on an average Sunday, 20 or 30 people.
We're attendance, yeah.
Attendance, yes.
We're about 190.
Okay.
No, I think we're
No,
around 160.
160, I think. Aren't we at this
We're
point?
going up and down.
Okay. Anyway, the attendance has been trending down. We need to reverse that. So it's
Any
lead
analysis
givers,
of
so
that
lead.
available? Is there any analysis of that available in terms of why people are leaving? I mean, you're taking a position if they're moving away or whatever, but has there been any kind of outreach to them to find out why they're leaving?
Informal, but not a formal outreach. Informal, but not formal. The couple of lead givers, those were forecasted, known, it was not to satisfaction. They left already, so.
And the people that haven't been coming, that we sent the letters to, it's because of personal reasons. We did not get anybody saying it's in church.
There's always one or two,
Right.
but in general, we haven't, but it hasn't been an aggressive formal analysis. But it's been informal, we've reached out, we've done a variety of outreach. But some of it is,
So it's a replacement issue too.
yes, replacement.
I was gone for 6 months and no one contacted me. And I'm not alone. And
Okay.
and the letter that was sent was somewhat demeaning as well, prior, instead of being contacted personally. You know, it was like, oh, you haven't given, you haven't been there, so we're going to take you off the rolls. People have been here for years and years and years and probably should have been personally contacted prior to that kind of a thing.
Is it also possible that since we don't have a youth director, that the families who, would come and those kids who would come because of the, I know we've been keeping it together, but since we don't have them as well, I personally say that there's not as many families at church, and I think that is probably a direct result, which is why we're doing this.
Yes, that is one conclusion that we have drawn, and we are taking a step in that direction. I'm glad to speak with you afterwards, and we can see what we can do to remedy and apologize for your personal situation.
Just would like to make a comment that about 20 or 30 families are not attending. To put this in another way, okay? If our average worship attendance right now is around 160, prior to 2006, our average worship attendance was 286, which means we have gone down 56% in attendance.
My number was not
put
going
in
that far
basket.
back. I was speaking over last year, but
Yeah,
yes.
and those averages take into account the Christmas and Easter. The 160, my guess, is a typical.
Yeah,
May I
we're a
also
little
suggest
above
that the
160.
attendance has been going down since the year 2000?
Yeah.
Every year, it has gone down. and I have the records, we
Yeah,
kept records.
I'm looking
I'm
at it.
saying that.
I'm looking at
this
the
is a-
average.
But you know what? This is a crisis in the making that took decades.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it
it
didn't
Not
just
happening in
happen.
Hillsborough.
It's not gonna happen overnight.
Okay, so just, if I can.
I see
let's-
that, I see that,
Yes,
because
and we-
from the prior,
So clearly, it is something we need to address. Starting from Walt's question,
yeah.
we need to understand that. Some of it we believe is contributed to, or is contributed by the changing nature of the Christian worship in the country. That's a part, but we need to also deal with issues, personal issues where individuals, we need to address those things as well. Absolutely. We're not putting it all in one place. We're saying bringing in a partner in ministry will allow us to deal with things within our congregation. But yes, we all need to reach out to members and support one another. Yes.
I think that what we're, hearing in Glenn's story, I think is indicative of where we are. And we're not doing everything as well as we could because we're stressed, because we're short of people to work here. So I think that we need to do something to get better, and I think that's what this plan is trying to do, is to get us the staff so that we can do these things better, so that people don't slip through the cracks and get a letter that makes them feel like they're not wanted here.
Right. So yes, we're trying to turn around and move forward. And we do acknowledge that for the last year and a half, we were focused on a serious personnel problem that distracted us. It took our attention away from mission and ministry. We dealt with it. We believe that we've addressed it. And then this is the next step at beginning to move forward again. Jack.
So, okay, hopefully people will step up and will increase giving to make this happen. What if that doesn't happen? What's the fallback plan if we don't get enough additional giving to make this possible?
Okay, so
because right now we're getting to 160 a Sunday. That's about the same size as most other churches that have a single pastor.
Okay, so let's take an action item for council and let's discuss it on Tuesday night. But let's come up with a good number that we can all agree to is what is the current, so that we have that number, whether it's 160, whether it's 180, whatever it is. Let's address that. But second, what is Plan B? So if we don't increase top-line giving, and we remain committed to continuing to try and build mission and ministry with the associate pastor, Plan B, there's only a couple of options for Plan B, which is to cut spending. But that's the only other option. Either we have more income or we have less outgo. All right, the only place that and again, we've talked many, many times over the last couple of years when I've been standing up here, we have a fairly large fixed expense requirement. There's a couple of areas that are fixed. The property and plant expense, pretty much fixed. Assuming we don't cut core staff, that's pretty much fixed. So I'm assuming core staff right now is pastor. The associate pastor would move into core staff in that view. The music program, key to keeping our ministry alive. That I think is sort of what we've decided is core spending. Oh, and the office staff. So that's kind of core. So between property and core staff, that's about 80% of our spend. That leaves us the other 15%, which is world mission support. We can go back to that again, which none of us wants to do, but that is just about the only option left. And we could cut the volunteer coordinator, which we think is really, really helping grow mission, but I didn't lump it into that core bucket. Those are the only two things we have left to cut, pretty much. Mission support and one staff position, without really cutting to the bone, without cutting the core of what we're doing.
What's our mortgage? Our mortgage.
I don't know. We have Well, we extended the mortgage. It's another 15 years, I think, $225,000 ballpark. No, $2,500 a month is our payment.
We've burnt the mortgage before. We've had campaigns too.
But that really isn't, that's only going to give us $12,000 a year, $13,000 a year. But again, that is, in order to burn the
Money's
mortgage.
cheap now, right, honestly, so you
Right.
don't want to pay that off if it's.
Yeah, we had,
Yeah,
but
but
what I was going to
money's
say
cheap, but
is,
for a church, it doesn't make sense. It's not like we can take the
But it
interest off
doesn't
of
give us
anything.
enough to cover 72,000.
Right.
yeah, but the other point is if people are willing, I would ask the question, if you're willing to step forward in faith and burn the mortgage, why not step forward in faith? What's the help me understand why one and not the other? That's my only question.
Because people understand that.
Okay, that may be the simple answer, that may be the simple answer.
Not just with their lives.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they understand it. It's
Yeah.
something they can give to.
Well, we can give to an associate
Right.
pastor as well.
reason why we fixed the roof.
That's right. Yeah.
You know,
I'm not saying I'm just telling you.
No,
why.
thank you, that's what we're trying to understand.
Yeah.
Chris?
Why don't we finish the presentation and then circle back
Right,
to the
yes.
choir at least?
What time is the choir?
10:30.
Okay, 5 more minutes, okay. So that was pretty much it on the finances. And then stewardship wanted to talk about how to step forward and perhaps fill that gap.
So Jill and the stewardship team have been working hard to plan for ways of engaging the congregation in increased giving and increased mission support in various ways. For one thing, spontaneously, more or less, we've already received over $6,000 in individual pledge increases toward, not pledge increases.
Actual
These
gifts.
are one-time gifts toward funding an associate pastor. That action that we're taking to move forward is enough to inspire enthusiasm among others. This Monday, tomorrow, a letter as well as an email communication will be going out from the stewardship committee to all of us asking for a repledge. And I'll talk to that in just a moment. I think we have a lot of planning and renovation to do in the way we do business, in the way we do worship, in the way we do mission. But as part of that, we also need to, I think, commit ourselves, or not, to revitalizing this congregation, to throwing ourselves into the mix. And so that revitalization is a key part of what we're, I hope, being called to do. So Jill, with the assistance of the stewardship committee, put together, I think, a moving plea, a prayer, if you will, that is part of the pledge card that will be going out tomorrow. And I'd like to read you the beginning of it, at least. Imagine a world with no hunger and homelessness. Imagine a world where you have safe places to form friendships for a lifetime and learn the importance of the gifts of service and respect. Imagine how we can help achieve this. We here at Good Shepherd have the opportunity to take a large step forward in faith through the calling of an associate pastor to help us imagine and accomplish. This step forward will not be easy, as Carl has demonstrated through the finances. Few good things are easy. We know that. It will take our time and our financial resources, our patience and our prayers. Currently, based on savings and cutting benevolence, we can support an associate pastor for a 3-year term only. Will our imaginings end at 3 years? There's no term on hunger and homelessness. There is no term on nurturing of youth. There is no term on God's love and forgiveness. And in that spirit, we commend ourselves to revitalizing the mission here at Good Shepherd. It has to come from our enthusiasm, our faith, and our money, our time, and our commitment to a revitalized future here. We also, as God's hands, as well as God's minds and hearts, have to do the hard work ourselves. We cannot wait for God to come down and present us with a ready plan. We are the plan, and it is up to us to make that happen. So it's in that spirit that we're asking for a repledge, and in that spirit, where we on council and all of us in the congregation will be called on, especially in this next year, to imagine a different way to do our worship, to do our mission. We cannot keep doing the same things. And we don't know exactly what those are. We have ideas, and they need to be worked out. Thank you. I give it back to you, Carl, and we can circle back. But at least you've seen the entire presentation, and now may be a time for questions.
So I'll moderate questions. Stephanie, if I could ask, anybody from choir who's leaving that has a question first? Stephanie, you okay? Debbie, you're okay?
Yep.
Thank you, choir, for attending.
Thank you for working with us.
Great. So now just general questions from the floor, and we'll continue until it's time to go to service, and then we'll pick up again after 11 o'clock service.
Could you make available the 2 slides that you had, the spreadsheet and the second page, copies for the congregation
Jeff,
to look?
Can we post those on the web somehow? Sure. Okay, I'll work with Jeff and find a way to get them up on the website.
This is a question, it's a statement. I will share this with Jill, but you can't imagine the impact of the Imagine letter on me, and I would think I would share that with Chris, on behalf of Chris as well. And also, I think the boost of, I didn't know about the $6,000 initial.
And that number is not in the numbers that I showed you. So
Okay. And also, without consulting with the woman with the darker hair there in the front, I'm also doing this if you could make that, the professional family ought to lead the way, even as a statement. I mean, that's just true in any organization. So make that 10, that we would take the 6 to the 10. And if that may, impact then the broader impact for, I just think the Head Start is very significant in any campaign. I know it is in hospitals, believe me. And if you put the whole thing on everybody, it feels like a big weight on everybody, including those who may be going through a passage time in which, God, I'd do anything if I could. So please do make that a 10.
great, thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you. Great, Kevin.
Do we know why, how, or where faith in Hillsborough is growing, and what other congregations are growing compared to us that we might be able to look at to compare?
So that's a good question, and that is a thing we can talk to Synod about. But I'm not sure it's a good assumption that there are a lot of growing congregations in New Jersey.
I just don't know.
I don't know
Is it
that-
geography? Is it population
Yeah.
increasing in the
Right,
area?
okay.
Is it
So-
programming? Is
Yeah.
it services or ministries? What's driving it?
We did an informal, working with Jill and Stewardship, survey of like-sized churches in the New Jersey Synod during December and January to determine, not exactly your question, Kevin, but to sort of understand those who had associate pastors, how they were funding it. So we didn't really get into the why are they growing, not growing, but it's something we can do. The point I was going to make, and I'll get to in a second, Joe, is every congregation that we really talked to that had a second pastor funded it by cutting mission support. That was the one trend that we were able to determine. unfortunately, we've taken the same step. I don't know, we didn't come up with any better ideas from talking to them about that. Their idea about growing program, music was key to most of these programs that we talked to. We're committed to that. Other than that, we didn't find a silver bullet, as you were, about why some congregations are growing and not. On a broader level, when we looked at national trends are significantly down. We're declining at a slower rate than the national trend. Again, national numbers don't speak to us and our personal situation, but we have tried to look at those things. We have not specifically gone to, let's say, Faith in Hillsborough and said, okay, what are you doing different or better than us?
Some things attracting.
I don't, so I think it's a worthwhile exercise. I'm not quite sure how one goes about, well, why do they like you better than me? You know, it's sort of like the girls at the prom. Why do they, I don't know how you ask that question without, hang on a second, Kat. Jeff was next, then Chris, and then Kat.
I mean, anyone can go on the ELCA website and take a look at the trend reports for different churches. Each church is going to be different based on just their fact whose membership are and whatever. But I mean, I know Faith has been doing pretty well. They're staying pretty good. We're about the same level as they are right now in terms of attendance. They had a big boost in giving for a building fund. But you take Zion and Oldwick, their attendance has dropped significantly, and they just lost their associate pastor. So it's really down to one pastor now. You've got Abiding Presence in Ewing, which is a little higher than us. They have two pastors, but if you look at their trend, they probably had the second pastor for a number of years. So there's all these factors you have to look into. The thing is, our attendance is down significantly. If you look even from 2010, our average reported on the ELC website was 226. So we're down about 50 or more per Sunday.
Which year was that?
That was from 2010.
Okay.
It was 226, and we're down 160, 165.
And we need to get that.
We don't know the number.
Let's get that number so we're all talking. Yes, you're right. Nobody's debating that we're down.
Right. I mean, even Pastor said at the last council meeting was about 160, 170. So, and it was nice we had a big influx today, but it was First Communion and it was the Schroeder's anniversary. I think we've got to, I'm just worried we're trying to put a solution in place without fully understanding the problem. And I think we've got to do more of that analysis before we really step out.
Well, okay, we do need to do continued analysis, and everybody, I think, supports that, and we've got to continue working that way. Yes, we need to understand the challenges we're facing and put forth solutions to address those problems. So I support that, what you're saying. Yes, we need to continue to do analysis. I think Chris, you were done with your question? Chris was next, and then I have Kathy in the back.
So we have some more anecdotal analysis for congregational dynamics over the last decade in Central Jersey. And we have benefited, all of us have benefited greatly by telecom industry and pharmaceuticals. Those industries have promoted over the last decade a lot of professionals coming in and moving out of the area, and we benefited from that because we pulled Lutherans from Minnesota that are temporarily displaced in New Jersey, and they come to us, and they come to Faith, and they come to St. John's. That's gone. There is no more mobility due to those industries. Those industries are cutting back. The financial services tends to be more local. So that's one of the challenges we face. We don't have that influx of professionals moving in from other areas that can help us grow, at least on a net basis. So we need more permanent solutions. And I think that is, we need to form a number of subcommittees, task forces, if you will. One to do more analysis so that we understand what the situation actually is. We need another one that focuses primarily on where is the need for worship, for communion, for faith community engagement, and how are we going to attract them. We need to do this, again, over this next year. That's going to be a major initiative on our part, but we can't stop and do that and finish that and not move, I don't think. I think the youth program is too important to focus, and we know that that's not working as well as it might.
Okay. So at the, Kathy, just at the risk of restating the obvious, yes, we are taking a step forward to plan to bring in an associate pastor to focus on youth ministry. No one, I don't think anyone from council or anyone in the congregation thinks that single step alone is the solution to all of our problems. And if any way I presented it that way, I apologize. That single act will not solve all of the problems and challenges and struggles that we will continue to face in the years ahead. So absolutely, we need to continue to explore and understand the world that's changing around us, both locally and more broadly. And we need to continue to reach out and find things that are working in other places and see if can they be replicated here. So absolutely, yes, we need to continue to do that. Kat.
When I was head of stewardship, they were always telling me, oh, it works best when you know what the goal is. So that's my question now, is I wasn't always really good as stewardship chair and making sure we knew what the goal was, but now I'm asking, do we have a goal in terms of increased pledge amount or one-time gift amount, or is there some make or break number? Is it the $74,000
Well, we don't,
cap?
that's, okay, you're right, we haven't presented it quite that way. I am going to go back and say, if we want to. Okay, so,
Put me on the
no, you're not. I'm trying to think of how I want to answer, because the make or break number, if we get down to per person giving, really depends on what assumptions you make about number of attendees, but I want to go back to this slide. All right, so if we look at the total income line, and we go back to what I said, we took an analysis, we took a look at fixed cost of property and plant, keeping this facility alive, not letting it deteriorate around our ears. And I'm not talking about a capital campaign. If we want to fund that core mission staff team, if we want to restore benevolence to the levels which we believe we're called to do, and we struggled to get to, that number, that 503 number hasn't changed. It needs to be $605,000 a year to do all of those things the way we said. The numbers just work out to be
The
600.
core, the mission support, and an associate pastor?
Yes.
Okay.
The numbers really haven't changed that much. I mean, when I did the analysis the first time, the associate pastor was really the two ministry
So we're hoping
professionals.
to grow our budget 20%.
That is our challenge, but we didn't set that challenge out for here. Right now, we're just trying to focus on a smaller, more modest goal, which is really 40 years, $100,000, $25,000 a year. Those numbers need to grow to $530,000 to make this plan work. That does not restore benevolence.
Okay.
Hang on.
I'm really having a tough time wrapping my head around this solution. This solution, wrapping my head around it. And maybe you can help me.
The solution being an associate pastor?
Associate pastor, and here's why. One of the core goals that you have is in strengthening the youth program, the education.
Yes.
Right? why did we not look, or maybe you did and we just haven't heard it, look into a strong candidate that can handle youth education and families?
Okay.
That is, to me, I mean, I'm thinking that that is a less expensive solution than associate pastor. And I'm thinking also that if we were to find somebody a la, let's say an Anthony Briggs, who has a passion for youth, somebody like that could revitalize our youth programs and education.
All right, so I want to answer that question in a couple of ways. First, this is not the forum to reverse that decision. This was voted on by the congregation, and we are moving forward. That was a direction voted on by the Congress, so we can't really.
No,
I'm going to answer your question.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't want to let anyone think that this is the forum for reopening that. But let me finish and let me answer your question. Okay, so we actually did look, now, we did come forward, council put forward a different plan at the January meeting. It got modified and voted on at the January meeting, and we are now moving forward on that. But in general, the simple analysis is a professional, and that goes back to the $605,000. Whether we go forward with an associate pastor, or we go forward with a youth professional, a lay professional, the cost difference is there's potential for a cost difference, but it's probably minor. So, and again, this is not hang on just a second, let me finish answering the question and I'll let you. So we're assuming $88,000 a year all in for an associate pastor. Rough numbers that we used for the analysis that have not been vetted and refined is that number would be maybe $65,000, $70,000 for a lay professional. That is not a tested, validated, vetted number. All I'm trying to show is the order of magnitude is
That's what I'm trying to understand.
small compared to the overall chunk. Now that $15,000 a year delta, if that's what it is, makes up part of the gap, but not all of the gap.
Well,
Hang on, wait, I'm trying to moderate. I think Glenn, your name is Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I see the need to do something, truly, but when this is operating on that assumption that 70,000 about a year loss stops and reverses. So potentially, if it doesn't do that, even if it stayed, you could be looking at 210. I'm thinking of like Capitol Building, we built the new narthex and everything. I feel like we're buying the building before we have the money, and that's the way you sink a ship. I mean, we don't have the money to pay for it. So with a capital funding campaign, you don't start building the building hoping that money comes in. You spend years getting some of that money first. You don't start digging in the ground before you have no money.
Okay,
So,
I understand your
I mean,
point.
you're looking at 210. Where does that 210 come from then? Who do we fire in 2 years if we don't have it?
That is what I'm putting forward as the challenge.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you were in the January meeting, this is not the plan that council put forward for the spending plan. This is what the congregation stepped forward and said, please move forward with this plan. This is our interpretation of what the congregation asked us to do. This is what hang on, Jeff. This is a view of that so that we can understand the challenge. Now, in fairness, when we put forth this plan, and to your point, we have not committed the spend yet. So in order to move forward, to hire this associate pastor will take a vote of the congregation. And at that point, we will know the exact salary we have to pay this individual, the compensation package, whether they accepted a term call when they started. And at that point, we have to vote to commit the funds. At that point, if we still have this gap, we will at least be making an informed, yet again, another informed. So in a sense, we haven't dug the foundation yet. in that sense, we're talking to the architects, we're talking to who the building firm would be, but we haven't committed the contract. We have to do that before we can take the final step. So you're absolutely right. When that vote comes to you all, and say, here is Mary Beth. She's a wonderful youth person. She wants to work with us. She wants $88,000 a year all in. Here's where we're at. When you vote yes or no on that candidate, it's got to be informed with, we have to fill this funding gap. Income must support our plan. Hang on, Jeff was next. Oh, go. Jeff was next, and then Chris. Jeff, you had another?
Well, first off, I want to make it clear that the council had wrestled with the idea of calling a full-time associate pastor, and had decided that the funds weren't there to justify that. That's why the council presented a plan that included a part-time associate pastor for a term call. It was only a last-minute motion at the meeting that was only passed by slightly over 50%. But I'm just making that
It was much
clear.
larger margin than that.
No, it was not.
Yes,
It
we
was
can do
38 to 30.
No,
Or
that's,
And about
full-time versus
7
part-time.
essentially.
okay, full-time versus part-time. I'm sorry,
Full-time
yes.
versus part-time.
I'm sorry, you're right. That was true.
Yeah. All right.
I thought you were talking about the vote between professional versus.
No, and I know.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
What I'm also concerned about here is the money that's shown for the associate pastor, the $89,000, is based on that they only get $42,000 as actual salary, which is actually less than what we paid Laura. It does include a housing allowance, but that's only $17,500. And I've looked at housing here, and I don't think with housing and utilities that you can get anything less than $2,000 a month. So you've got a problem there that we got to deal with. And then, I mean, are we talking about somebody who's just out of seminary?
Yes,
somebody who's-
I'm sorry, that's the assumption for this salary range. You're absolutely right.
I know.
And I have to throw in a very important corrective, and Jeff, it'll help you. A pastor can, by IRS, declare any portion of the 88 for housing. It's up to them and then you to define. So that should be just a projection and should never lock in housing.
That's not what I'm talking about.
88 is not the compensation. 88 is our total cost.
Yeah, but I'm saying, of the total, of the salary,
It's fighting
That's our
out
total
insurance.
cost.
Clear on this.
Okay, so
Yeah,
Jeff,
yeah,
you're absolutely right.
yeah.
This is
I'm
a-
going based
projection.
on, I'm going based on what the
Okay.
Synod puts out, and they're saying 42,000. Okay, for tax purposes, yeah, they can say whatever they want.
They
I'm
can make it
saying
all
the actual
42.
cost for living
Okay.
around New Jersey is going to be at least 24,000 or more a year. So you've got a good portion that, I'm just concerned, are we talking about bringing somebody in here and then we don't give them enough money to really live well? And that's
How is that different from a layperson?
more than likely, I mean, it depends on whether, we'd have to look at it. There may be a lot of lay people who would not want to move to New Jersey because of the cost of living. If there's somebody who's here who,
Okay, so in the interest of just, Jeff, I understand your concern. What we have to avoid in this forum and other forums is debating hypotheticals. When we get the final package, we can then discuss the actual numbers. And you're absolutely right. If we find that we cannot recruit a candidate for this level, for this funding, we're going to have to deal with it. But right now, all we're dealing with are my forecasts, our assumptions, which I try to put forward so everybody can understand. But you're absolutely right. Until we actually get a candidate, talk to that person, their family circumstances, what they need to live, what their assumptions are, that number is just exactly what you said, a projection. And we're gonna learn a couple of things. It's either too low to attract a good candidate, or it's going to attract a good candidate, but it's a two-family income opportunity, and that has to be part. But we won't. All of these are realistic issues and concerns, but right now they're unknowable until we get a candidate.
why not set a higher goal so that we can try to help with newly rated?
Okay, we could raise any or change any number on my assumption, but the key is, if we offer more the associate pastor, that just makes that gold or yellow number in the right go up.
Jeff, you got to remember that 88,000 is the cost to us. It's like, let's say the pastor takes the full amount, that's tax deductible housing, right? That's $16,000 to him. So that's 88 plus 16. That's what you're really giving him in terms of income.
No,
Yeah,
no.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
88 includes the 16 or 17,000.
No, he's saying if
No,
tax
no.
free.
But
Not
they,
the tax
if
advantage,
they have a
doesn't.
spouse for whom the housing allowance, upping it and saving 25, 30% on housing,
tax.
they can designate any portion of that housing allowance
So it's a
and
net
save
increase.
massive of money.
Between
If
them.
they have a working
Yeah,
spouse, or even
that
if they
exhausts
just want
any
to
income
put it on
from the
their
other
house.
side, is what you can do.
That is not preset, that's up to a clergy person.
Okay,
They
wait,
recommend
Walt, one
it.
second. So Jeff, I think, or not Jeff, Chris was next, and then Walt, and then we'll continue. And we have about 5 more minutes before it's time to go to, and I invite you back following service. So Chris.
Just a point of fact about the lay professional. By Synod guidelines, a faith professional with a master's degree is the same compensation as an associate pastor, no different. It's the same, by Synod guidelines. No congregation has to follow Synod guidelines. We can try to find somebody without a degree, or we can try to negotiate them down. But the same goes for an associate pastor. By Synod guidelines, though, there is really no financial difference in the two positions.
And that is the same in the Midwest.
Right.
Okay, just Walt, and then I'll get you.
Well, I apologize, I'm not even a member of the congregation right now, but I was here for 30 years, and I am Jill's father. But I want to talk more about the situation. Jill was baptized in a church in Elizabeth, New Jersey. It no longer exists. Rosa and I joined 2 churches in Pennsylvania when we moved back from North Carolina. Both of them are failing. One is yoked with another congregation. One doesn't know what to do. Merge, yoke, go out of business, whatever. So this is a serious issue for all churches. These happen to be Lutheran churches. When we left the first Lutheran church in Pennsylvania, I went to the ELCA website, got the statistics, and said, 100 people attending on Sunday, you can break even. All right? That's a good round number that you can afford a ministry that's worth talking about. All right? 50% of the 12 churches that I looked at in the geographic area had less than 100 attending. That piqued my interest. I went through the rest of the Northeast Pennsylvania Synod. I only went through 150. I didn't go through 250 churches. Of the 150 churches, 75 did not have 100 attending. Okay? So it's a very sad situation right now. And this congregation, excuse me, is alive. Excuse me. The difference between this congregation and the 2 we were in Pennsylvania is night and day. All right? You don't know how good it is here. Well, you do. And the fact is, it is terrific. All right? Now, I was also the head of Sunday school when Harvey Nelson was brought in. And Harvey Nelson was a part-time pastor, assistant, whatever his title was. He was going to graduate school at Drew. And I can only relate to the day we hired him. Jack called me up and said, we have a candidate. We have had a notice out to any place we think for over 6 months to try to find a candidate for this part-time job. Nobody. Labor Day weekend, Harvey arrived from, I think it was Minnesota actually, might have been North Dakota.
Minnesota.
And Jack and I thought, God, this answered. We had lunch, and we decided Harvey was the right guy. We hired him. I think that everybody who was here those days would say he did a great job. And it was a turning point in terms of this congregation's growth. Not numbers, but in growth of spirituality. I think all the assistants that we called lent a lot in that area. So I would say, go ahead, do something. Don't wait till the doors are going to be shut in your face, right? Because you can see the trend already. It's clear from the analysis that's been done. So do something. The financials, it's a $100,000 shortfall in 4 years, right? Well, if you assume 100 people come to church who are giving units, 100 giving units every Sunday, that's $5 a week. All right? That's the stewardship impact. Now, so stewardship might be the 4-year solution to this problem. It depends on whether people feel tapped out or not right now. All right? It's not healthy economic times, a lot of people are tight. All right? But that's what the cost is on a stewardship basis. But my real concern is, there was nothing on this presentation that talked about evangelism. And whether it's evangelism inside the congregation, to make sure that members are part of the community, or whether it's outside, that's the key. All the churches I'm talking about failed because they didn't have an effective evangelism program. Now, that's a very difficult thing to put together an effective evangelism program. But somehow, the church I'm in, just leaving now in Pennsylvania, we rented to a Bible fellowship congregation. They have grown by probably 30% in the year that they've been in our building. And our congregation dropped by 30%. So there's something wrong in what we're doing as Lutherans, all right, in my mind, compared to some of the other Protestants. So do something, God will provide.
Thank you. Jan, you were up and,
That's okay, I'd rather have Walt have that last one. You're no fool.
so on that end, perhaps we can close with the Lord's Prayer.
Lord,
Hallowed be
thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Perhaps one thing we could do is just make a version.
Nope. Okay, it's traditional.
Even do it in Greek if it's